Hey guys, are you ready for it? Today's August 2nd, 2018, 2:01 p.m. Central Time. Planned Parenthood is pissed, and they are lying 100% about the Title X rule change that came out of HHS. I'm not 100% sure how many of you guys are even aware of this. Personally, I was not. This happened recently. I had just had my surgery, was not paying attention to the Federal Register, and probably, to be honest with you, was not paying too much close attention to detailed politics at the time. But before my channel was deleted by YouTube, I let you guys know the Trump administration was actually thinking about doing this. I just didn't know it came to volition. So this is the deal. I'm going to show you the actual rule change, which is this. I'm going to show you two articles with statements from senior people at Planned Parenthood directly lying about this situation. The problem is Democrats are loud mouths, okay? That is their advantage over Republicans, 100%. And they put out extremely emotional, over-exaggerated narratives about things they hate, okay? And I would have to say 100% of the time, some of it is inaccurate, okay? Not necessarily all of it, but some of it's inaccurate. And that is what they did with this. They actually created statements and assumptions and all kinds of shit prior to this even coming out. And now Hollywood's pissed about it. Everybody's pissed about it that are pro-choice or whatever. And it's simply, I'll give you a very simple summary of what this is. I just did a very detailed video for my Patreon account, which is what I do for my Patreon account, is do detailed stuff for a whole $5 a month. You can see all this stuff talking about this. So I know this document in and out, okay? So here's the two articles, though, or one article and then one website. It says, it's from Newsweek. This came out May 2nd, 2018. This rule change came out June 1st, 2018 and was published. Here's what the Trump administration's proposed Title X rule would do to abortion access in America. All right, quote, a patient walking into a Title X funded healthcare facility is going to have their complete medical options withheld from them, end quote. This came from Saeed, a Planned Parenthood's senior policy analyst, told Newsweek on Monday. Quote, physicians will essentially be forced to lie to patients in order to abide by the program's requirements, end quote. That is 100% inaccurate. The only way that statement is true is if Planned Parenthood continues to get Title X funding, if this rule change becomes part of law. In other words, it's an actual rule change because it's just proposed right now. The comment section just ended 2 days ago. So if it goes through and Planned Parenthood continues to get Title X funding and they have a facility in which is a dual facility, okay? Meaning they do abortions in the back room and they do all the fucking other bullshit Planned Parenthood does that actually falls under Title X, like the care services and stuff, they're violating this rule change. And yes, the physicians would be forced, not essentially, would be forced to lie to their patients, saying that they do not do abortions in that facility. They do not do abortions, period. They would absolutely have to lie. That's the only way that any Title X funded healthcare facility would have to lie, beyond Planned Parenthood too. Because what this rule change did is it finally did what I've been saying for years. I have been saying for years that under Title X, it specifically states, no joke, that none of the funds under this title shall be used for abortion services or be expanded. In fact, it actually says expanded in the 2015, 16, 17, 18 Appropriations Acts, okay? So they expanded on it from the original 1970 version. 1970 is when Title X was created, okay? It has always been that way, period. There has been confusion, and there has been investigations by IGs and all kinds of stuff into Title X grantees, finding out they are actually misusing these funds to not necessarily provide, even though I think some of it was provide, but more promote abortion, and also had dual facilities, okay? And I've been saying for years that if you have overhead costs, you are renting a building, you are paying a mortgage on a building, you are paying for electricity, whatever, you paid for a bed, okay, for an abortion facility with Title X funding, you are violating Title X funding, and you are supporting abortion, period, okay? That's what this rule change is finally addressing. It is making people who are eligible under Title X completely separate their businesses if they deal with abortion, okay? You know what that's called? That's called capitalism. So if Planned Parenthood doesn't want to expand their shit into another building so they can continue to get Title X funding, then shame on them and go fuck yourselves. I am pro-life. I am not pro-choice. And there's certain instances where I think abortions are appropriate. Obviously, when the mother is having complications and her health is at risk, rape, incest, those types of things. But when you're wandering the streets being pro-choice, my body, my choice bullshit, talking about how you can murder your kid in a late trimester, okay, makes no sense to me. Why are people getting abortions so late in the game? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Have you decided you just don't want a kid, but you've carried it for so long? Or have you all of a sudden become into a financial crisis and you can no longer afford that child? So now you have the opportunity to abort it. Is disgusting. Is absolutely disgusting. Okay? And abortion under Roe versus Wade and Casey was specifically ruled by the Supreme Court that abortion is not unlimited, okay? Which is how all kinds of shit's coming out in the states, and yes, they're going to courts, but they will be upheld at some point. Putting regulations on abortion as far as you can't have late-term abortions, you can't have this, you can't have that type of situation. They're still allowing it because it is considered a constitutional right, which I think is bullshit, but whatever. But they're just putting limitations on it that I think are absolutely justifiable and just logical, okay? Because too many people out there, as far as I'm concerned, are using abortion for birth control, and that's unacceptable. So anyway, if you scroll down a little further in here, it says that means low-income women and women of color, the latter of which make up half of the 4 million patients who benefit from Title X, would feel the impact of a domestic gag rule most, and find it more difficult to access abortion, as well as a range of other reproductive health services like birth control, cancer screenings, and well woman exams. 100% inaccurate. I'm going to go into the more detailed aspect of what this rule change does in a moment. This is Bustle, okay? This is a stupid-ass website that's an activist website. Dawn Legwins, I have no idea how to say that last name, the executive vice president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, an organization which stands to be profoundly affected by the proposed rule, highlighted many problems with the rule in the press release on Tuesday. This is what this bitch said. This is the worst attack on women's health and rights we've seen from the Trump-Pence administration. No woman should be denied basic information about her health care, including safe and legal abortion. Moreover, the result of this rule is that people will not get health care they need. They won't get birth control, cancer screenings, STD testing and treatment, or even general women's health exams. End quote. That is so goddamn painful. So painful. It almost brings to question if that's truly the case, okay? then what the hell is Title X funding going towards? Like, I would literally ask Dawn, why does Title X even exist if it doesn't cover birth control, cancer screenings, all that bullshit, and general women's health exams for these clinics? What is it covering? The statement is illogical to begin with. But beside the point, what this does, besides separate facilities, okay, it makes it so that the Title X grantees, whatever, do not promote, do not facilitate, do not advocate, do not anything, don't have pamphlets, nothing in their offices where they are providing women's health care, as well as adolescent, okay, with teens, men, and otherwise, because they're part of the fucking baby making process, okay? They're not offering it, they're not promoting it, advocating it, nothing, okay, in order to get Title X funding. The only time, this is where they say, in order to have Title X funding, you can't even mention abortion. And if someone asks about abortion, you can't tell them shit. That's what they're saying, right? That's not the case. In this specific rule change, it specifically states that the only time abortion is to be brought up is if the woman asks for abortion who has already made the decision to have it, period. Then the physician provides them with a list of qualified physicians, everything else, whatever, and says, here you go, have a blast. And then they walk out of the room. They don't explain abortion. They don't do shit to keep their Title X funding, period. End of story. That's the only time abortion can come up. So by this bitch saying you're not getting all of your healthcare choices, okay? You're not getting all your healthcare information, including safe and legal abortion. All this is happening, okay, is if you're pregnant, okay, and you don't know abortion exists, period, at all, whatsoever. Nobody's mentioned it to you in your entire fucking life. When you got pregnant, say you're 14 years old, you get pregnant, nobody has mentioned to you that perhaps you should get an abortion. Is very unlikely. But the only time that statement would even be close, okay, to being true is if you're ignorant and you don't know abortion exists. Because yes, the Title X funded healthcare facilities and everything else do not give you that option, as in tell you about it, okay? They don't tell you about it, promote it, nothing. There's no pamphlets, no leaflets, no nothing about abortion in their clinics. So if you're ignorant and stupid and don't know abortion exists, then tough shit, okay? Tough shit. But other than that, all this is doing is creating transparency. It's creating transparency between the healthcare recipients of Title X. It's also giving very specific direction as to you cannot use Title X funding for, besides overhead costs and shit, any type of promotion, like paperwork, anything. You can't use it for lobbying. You can't use it for lobbying legislation of any kind, wanting to promote or expanding abortion. You can't do anything with abortion, period. End of story. And whether you like it or not, Title X funding has been written that way since it existed and began its program in 1970. It has always been the case. Title X funding is not to go towards any type of abortion service whatsoever. All HHS is doing is defining that it can't be used to promote it either, or anyway, indirectly support it via buildings or anything else. With that being said, this document, I'll give you all 3 links, is written so well and has so much legal backing. They mention Russ versus Sullivan, which is a very prominent case that actually addresses every little bullshit argument Planned Parenthood and all these little bastards wandering the streets wanting to kill their children, their bastard children, for that matter, most of the time, arguments down the toilet because it's already been addressed under Russ versus Sullivan. So if they're going to take this to court, the likelihood of it being overturned or getting an injunction or some shit is highly unlikely unless the court doesn't go by Chevron precedent, nothing. Okay, it doesn't go by nothing. It just is an activist judge. Okay, this rule change was so well written that it shows all the legal backing. It shows the prior stance from HHS on certain things and what it is now, what their stance is now on it, and it gives you reasoning behind it. It mentions IG reports regarding abuses being used and such things like that. I mean, literally, the lawyer from the federal government who would have to go to court to defend this pretty much has to do nothing. All they have to do is hand this rule change to the judge and say, here you go. Let me hear their side now. Because there's really nothing that will overturn this. I do not foresee this at all not becoming a rule. Because like I said, it's a proposed rule. The comment section just ended July 31st. So I'm assuming sometime this year, there's never a timeline with rules. So they could make this rule permanent 5 years from now. And when I mean permanent, these rules can be overruled by HHS later, and it can be overruled by Congress. And I won't get into all that detail. But the point is, I do not believe this rule change will not come about. I believe it will. I don't think HHS will back down on this. And it should be very interesting to see how this turns out if, for some reason, this comes out prior to midterms. Especially if it comes out prior to Kavanaugh being confirmed in the Senate for the Supreme Court, because everybody's so bent out of shape about Roe versus Wade, when he specifically stated he would 100% uphold Roe versus Wade anyway. Anyway, this is Are You Ready For It? Take care, guys. Have a great day.